Welcome, welcome, welcome. What do we have here? An Aerotech Arreaux. This has been on the build list for over 20 years. And I finally get around to doing it. A mid-power kit. You can fly up to G motors, maybe even H if you're getting a little crazy with it, but it might go supersonic. I would be willing to bet a true mid-power kit. This thing is when we start getting a little serious. Similar to Estes, but a little more robust. And the cool little box that it comes in can also double as a stand while you work on it, or when you're done building it, display it. Just take those tabs out, fold it. There it is. Yes, sir. Overall, this kit went together pretty smooth. So, what do we got here? Explaining how to do the igniters, the warranty, and the instructions. Let's get this inventory list. Here's the coupler. This is a payloader kit, by the way. This is your forward, aft ring, and ejection baffle. Got your contour rail guides. And launch lugs. So it comes with both. You can do either or. And your eye bolts, or eye screws. A 22-inch parachute. That's nylon. And I believe that's an F-spacer. It's no longer needed in this kit. And that's another piece that I'm not exactly sure what it's for. You got your body tube. That'd be the payload body tube, the upper section. It's not slotted. And you got your nose cone. Your elastic shot cord. Thicker, wider. Your Fin-Lok rings. That's what makes these kits interesting. Your fin-lockable fins, 3. Centering ring. Bulkhead. Other centering ring. And the cooling mesh that goes with your baffle. No wadding needed. And the retaining ring, aluminum, with a 24 millimeter adapter. That's right, it's 29 millimeter. So there's your 29 millimeter motor tube and decals. Vinyl decals, and there it is. The main body tube. With the fin slots, and also slots for the launch lugs, which we're not going to use for this build. We're going to do the rail guides. Instructions. You're going to have to read them. You have to follow it a little bit, and you're going to have to pay attention to what's no longer needed. Since these kits come with the aluminum retaining ring now, there's some, see what I got marked off here? Those X's is no longer needed, or does not even come with the kit. It does not use an engine hook. If you have an old school kit that maybe you've had sitting around for many, many years, or you maybe just bought it off of eBay and it has the engine hook, well, or if you prefer it that way, if you'd rather build it that way, well, you can. But this is how we follow it for using the new and improved way of doing this with the aluminum retaining ring. So I've already had some of the stuff marked off, so it'd be easier for me to follow as well. For the most part, we will be following the instructions. Of course, I do a couple little deviations here and there, but not too much, nothing too crazy. I thought this was going to be more complicated. The instructions are okay, but you probably do want to have a little bit of experience building rockets before you jump into an Aerotech kit. But really, it's not so bad. And they're all built pretty much the same from what I can tell. So let's do our test fits, see if we got to do any sanding. That's actually going on pretty good right now. Now, everything's recommended to be super glue. Whether you don't like that idea or not, it is recommended that you use super glue. At least medium viscosity. That's what I use primarily throughout this entire build. If you want to use epoxy, go ahead and do it. Maybe wood glue to certain parts, but nah, don't use wood glue. This is super glue or epoxy, I'd say, type of kit. Especially with those centering rings. They're not paper, so you're not doing paper to wood. It's plastic and like a composite material. But right now we're just taking the measurements, and you want to follow these measurements. If you're building it with the aluminum centering ring, so right now the illustrations are okay. They help. The instructions, when you're reading it, it might confuse you a little bit, but if you watch this video to supplement your build, it'll make sense. See, these are going to go on pretty tight, so these do have to be sanded down a little bit. I did not sand the tube itself, so I'm just taking my thumb and kind of rounding that off, kind of chamfering it a little bit, so it'll help fit on there. Usually I'll do that before I do any sanding. If it fits on there, and then maybe I won't have to do any sanding, but I did wind up having to do sanding on the Fin-Lok ring there. And that's what's unique to these kits. They make them super solid. I'm just going to sand off just a little bit there just to kind of fit it on there. Now, it don't go on there loose. You want it to be a little bit snug, but not so much where you got to try to use every ounce of strength in your hand to put it on there. But when you do the fins, when you get to that part, it does help for them to not slide or move around on you very easily. So you do want some firmness with the Fin-Loks, because it'll overall help you with the alignment. But when it all goes together, there's something about this kit that is definitely an upgrade from Estes. Yeah, it's more pricey. You can get an Arrow kit for around, let's say, 70 or so bucks. And let's say the Star Orbiter, you can get that for around 20, 25 with or without shipping. So yeah, I'm just going to sand it enough to where it fits on there. Now there is kind of a rounded side, and there's a flatter side to those. You want the flatter side to go up against the centering rings. You'll see later on. I wasn't sure about that originally. But we are going to deviate from those measurements a little bit, because I like the way that I wind up having the retainer sitting. Right, so we just got to make sure that fits. And that's what you do. At least that's what I do. I will test fit 100 times, measure 10 times, cut once, right? To be honest, this is probably the most complicated part of the build. And it's really not that bad. I just wasn't sure, because this is my first Aerotech build. I wasn't sure especially how these go on, if there's a certain way for them to go on, but really you'll see that there's a side on them. And one of them is a little bit more rounded, and one of them is more flatter. The flatter side is where the center ring is going to sit. And the center rings are going to sit flush up against the locks. See, I'm not putting a whole lot of pressure. I'm just kind of twisting it around. But you see how easy, maybe you can kind of tell. They do, by the way, the centering rings do have little slots in them for the engine hook, which obviously we're not using an engine hook. But yes, test fit, test fit, test fit before you start gluing. Snug, but not He-Manning it. All right, so that kind of roughened that up a little bit, but it's no big deal. We get it corrected. So now let's put the aft centering ring on. Remember, your third center ring is also the baffle. No wadding in this. Interesting way this is done. The labyrinth system. Just put it up there flush. See how it sits flush? That flatter side is touching that centering ring. And then once you get them both lined up, those should snap into the Fin-Loks. The fin should snap into the Fin-Loks. There's little slots where the fin tabs are that that's where those locks are supposed to be lined up to and spaced properly apart. If they're too close or too far apart, it's not going to sit right. I'm convinced if you build one Aerotech kit, they kind of all go together similar. Of course, the next kit after this that I built was the Sumo, and I'll have that coming out in a later build video. Now, put the centering or the retaining ring on. I'm just going to go ahead and mark that off to kind of give myself a measurement as to about how far that's going to sit. I'm going to try and line the centering ring up to it. And of course, how far that retaining ring sits is going to be up to you. But if you follow the measurements in the instructions, to me it sat too far inside the rocket. So I wanted it to stick out a little bit farther. Yeah, test fit the RMS motor in there, 29-120, 40-120. And we're all lined up, it looks like. They say that it's good to put an empty motor or a RMS in there, something in there, when you go squeezing the fin on there so it doesn't crush the motor tube, because it can be a little snug. If it's that snug, there might be an issue, so you might have to do some sanding. But I didn't really have that issue that I noticed. But I also, see, I'm measuring with and without the engine in, with the actual ring, the retaining ring on. See how far it sticks out. See if there's any fitting problems at all. 3-fin kit, not a 4-fin, so goes by, I'd say, a little bit easier, a little faster. So that's pretty much the exact measurements. And we'll see here in a little bit how that's going to fit, which I'm going to change that up. Should just kind of pop right off. Not fall off, but definitely use a little force to pop it off. So I'm just marking about where they're sitting. Sometimes you just have to measure what works for you. And the instructions are just a guide, and so is this video. As long as it all fits, and there's no problems when you go to actually put it inside the rocket. All super glue. All super glue, just like the instructions say. Apparently, it is recommended to use super glue because, especially with the labyrinth system, apparently epoxy can be a little more flammable even when dry. So they recommend the super glue. And super glue is a lot quicker, but that can work against you too, because it's almost instant. So when you go into full commit mode and start gluing, you better have it right. And when you start making these measurements, you might have to change it up again. So you might have to use that eraser from time to time. Like earlier, I made an extra line in there I didn't have to, because it already came with a line on the motor tube. You're supposed to use that to line up your Fin-Loks and where to put your marks for the Fin-Loks and the centering rings. Now, I'm just messing with the qualm in here a little bit, just to make some marks for the baffle, because it wants you to mark off where the baffle is going to go about a 1/4 inch down the tube, and you're going to make little slits with a hobby knife. You're going to glue in the baffle slash forward centering ring slash shot cord mount, where you mount the shot cord to. with one of the eye screws. Yep, about 90 degrees a piece. Of course, that line that it comes with, I'm using that. And you make slits with your hobby knife, about 1/4 inch it says. And of course, don't cut yourself when you do this. Be careful. Try to cut away from yourself. Boom. Not too bad. And another one. Ooh, I got that one. Don't stab yourself. We got this. All right. That's just going to help the baffle slide in. Here's you're going to put that flush. Of course, you can always omit the baffle if you don't like doing it this way. You can just put another center ring on the up there and mount your shot cord to the motor tube itself in the centering ring that way. But I'm trying to keep this kit as original as possible. So, do a little test fit, screw in the eye screw, and then we'll put some super glue on it. Make it a little more permanent. All the way down. Not Superman hulking it. We're not going to strip it, even though we're going to glue it. So now we're all measured up. 1, 2, 3. Aft, center, and forward centering ring. Doing a test fit. I think we're good. And there we go. I'm going to kind of squeeze it so that way it don't slide in on me. You see right about where that sits. Now, to me, that's about where it would be right. But if you follow the measurements, to me, it was just sitting in too far. And then we're going to cut out those slots for the fins. But I do not cut out the slots for the launch lugs because I use those to measure the conformal rail guides. I'm going to fill in the spirals. There it is, the old trusty toothpick and the old Bondo putty. Kind of like how we did with the Estes kits. But I did notice that with this, and of course these extra thick, nice, super duper strong body tubes, cardboard, but still much more robust than an Estes kit. This is a 1.9 inch kit. Yep, making the old candy cane once again. Totally optional step. Just as purely cosmetic, just to get rid of some of those spirals showing up through the paint. Probably in my future builds, I will go ahead and sand it first. Get like that first little layer of paint, paper off, and then fill it in. Ooh, transition. Must have been a passage of time. Speed things up. See, it wasn't as watery this time either. It was mixed up a little bit cakier. But it was going on. Even this type of tube, it was still sticking pretty good. But yeah, I probably will in the future start just sanding it first. And then that way those middle spirals that I'm not hitting won't show up so much. Because they do a little bit. But whether they're worth filling in or not, I think is completely up to you. But they do show up a little bit. So if I sanded it first, one layer, and then did this, it'd probably help a little bit. Oh, another transition. So like I said, I decided that I was going to not take out the slots for the launch lugs. And by the way, as of this recording, Aerotech is developing conformal rail guides that have a slot just like the launch lugs. So you won't have to just, they'll be a lot easier to measure out and attach to the rocket itself. Because if you went the launch lug way, you just would put them in those slots and not have to worry about them going on crooked or anything. The rail guides are a little different. And you'll see that in the paint video. And another thing, all future builds after these few couple builds that I do, this part right here will be included in the paint and finish. That way we can speed up the build videos a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and fill those in and sand over them, paint and prime over them. They wound up not showing up. These might have been a little too cakey. Could have been a little bit more watery, so it wasn't mixing properly. Yes, I've probably wanted to build this kit probably since at least 2000, when I first got into rocketry around that time in 1998. I discovered Aerotech, looking up rockets on the old dial-up. Yeah, everybody get off the phone, because as soon as you want to get on the internet, you can't get any phone calls, and if anybody picks up the phone, that just dead. You're knocked off your webpage, whatever you're trying to look at. Shopping around the old internet, looking up rocket kits, and I know that Aerotech popped up, and man, they just always look so nice. And this right here, just the way that paint scheme is, it's sleek, like an arrow. But of course, back then, I didn't know how it's pronounced. You gotta think kind of French. Arreaux, and not Aerotech, as I used to pronounce it. With its yellow and black industrial railing looking design. Just looks serious. Alright, so now we got both of them done. I'll save you from the other one. Candy cane factory. It's not even a rocket. Of course, we got the nose cone, which is a slightly different plastic than the Estes kits. Seems a little bit more robust. I'm not sure exactly what kind it would be. Polyethylene, polypropylene. I'm not a chemist. I'm not really super knowledgeable on it. But anyways, you want to get rid of that seam right there from the molding process. You can either take the blunt edge. Sometimes you get away with the hobby knife on the blunt edge and just kind of scrape it along. And if that don't work, well, then you take the sharp edge and just try not to cut into the part you want to keep. We're just trying to get rid of that mold flashing. And then we sand it with, I don't know, sandpaper in the 100 to 200 grit range. Not extremely fine, but not extremely rough. I wonder if 2 grit sandpaper would be like just holding 2 rocks and just scraping on it. I don't know. Random thought. Just getting it knocked down, rolling it over the tip. Then we're going to take that contouring putty, like we did on the previous builds, and try to fill in some of those deeper spots in the seams. It has a couple little areas, I guess, from the molding process, not just the flashing. It has like some crevices in it from the mold process, but it all wound up filling up just fine. Roughen it up so your primer and your paint will stick. And then once this is done, you put wipe it off with alcohol on a paper towel, or maybe take a tack cloth and then take a paper towel just to get off all that plastic dust. that you probably should not be breathing in. So this is either an outside part, or you wear a mask part, or you just raw dog it like me. I would highly recommend not. I know I'm a bad boy. Just working the shoulder, which I do wind up painting. Even though this is a payloader rocket, the parachute does not attach directly to the nose cone. It's going to attach to the bottom of the payload, which that coupler, I do deviate from the way that that goes in the instructions. You'll see later on in the video. That could make or break me, but I'll explain why when we get to that point. So I'm just going to take a tack cloth, which can leave a residue, by the way, because of that wax that's on it. Can make it kind of sticky, waxy. So a paper towel with like alcohol or even water. The alcohol will dry faster, and it shouldn't harm anything. Just wait for it to dry until you go to the next step with the contour putty. With the old Tester's contouring putty, we're just going to fill in that mold right there, that flashing, that seam. And when you do this, you've got one shot at it because it dries very quickly. Don't go back and forth. Go in one direction. That's it. Take your finger, stick, whatever, with a glove or not, which I don't. We're just filling it in. If you try to go back and forth, it'll cake up and booger up on you. So don't do that. Just one smooth motion. That's it. You're done. You've got maybe about 30 seconds. See, I go back. Don't do that. It's pretty slick stuff, but it does dry incredibly fast. Not as fast as super glue, but you hear the clock ticking. Get on it. I was just kind of taking my finger and trying to fill in some of those other molding areas. And then once this is done, see it kind of caked up, boogered up. Not a big deal. It all works out. Ooh, another transition. It's a nice candy cane, you might say. Well, we're going to have to sand all that off. And I haven't popped the fin slots out yet. And I believe this was 220 grit. When you're at the shoulder, the ends, roll over it. Don't come back on it because it can roughen up the edge of the tube in a way you don't want. You might round over a little bit, but you come back over, it might roughen up the actual edge of the body tube itself and deform it. It can give you issues that I've noticed. This is definitely a disclaimer area here. This stuff right here is pretty rank to breathe in, so definitely wear a mask or just have a well-ventilated area. Do it outside, in a garage, somewhere that's well-ventilated. Don't breathe this stuff in. It can be pretty rough. It's bad, actually. Not good to breathe in. Wear a mask, respirator, something. Shirt. I don't know. Just don't breathe in it. Okay, don't breathe it in, okay, it's bad. Okay. And every now and then, just kind of stop, see what you're doing. Maybe wipe it off with a tack cloth, like that. Maybe feel it, see how smooth it is. You didn't miss any spots. And continue to work. Just working on down, working on down. What say you guys? Maybe leave me a comment. Do you like filling in your spirals, yay or nay, or what's your preferred method? I've heard of wood filler for the fins. I've heard of using this Bondo putty. I've also even heard of wall crack spackle. Like drywall, like, you know, you get pissed off and you punch your wall, which I don't recommend doing that, but you got to fix it. Well, that patch kit, that stuff right there, that spackle, that can even work to fill it in. So, I also left this fin slots in because I didn't want to roughen up the edges for the fin slots. So I left them in for this part, but they will be popped out. I lied. I should have. I'm going to go ahead and pop them out. Yeah, don't rip them out. Use your hobby knife. Don't rip them out and rip the paper. You have a big gouge and you have to fill that in. Isn't a big deal, but be an extra step. Leaving them in would have just made it sand. I could just sand it over them, but maybe may not, because you know what? They do bulge in and out like that. They're kind of flexible, so if going over them, if I was going to kind of roughen up the edges and cause an issue with the fins fitting, it was probably going to happen regardless, but it didn't. I didn't have that problem regardless, so it's all good. All worked out. I didn't really rip that out, I kind of twisted it out, see? And that one, see, just came right on out. But there's your straggler, so we got to get that guy. You're coming with me, whether you like it or not, buddy. Told you. So I'm just going to kind of sand around the edges kind of carefully. Just kind of start right there. Working away from it. Flip it over. Do the same thing. I mean, most of that's going to be covered up by the fins anyways, and you'll see at the very end of this video I do something that you should not do. Don't make super glue fillets. Don't do that. You'll see. I'm not exactly sure what the biggest and baddest motor you could put in this bad boy. But I know I could rock sim an eye in it, which would be like a 29 360 motor. And I rock simmed it, and it went like over a mile at like 700 miles an hour. I don't even know if that'll fit in there with the baffle. I'd have to do a test fit. I actually have one. I'll show you guys that in a later video. My RMS and engine collection. Motors, engines. Interchangeable word, that is. See, I don't pop those out. I just sand over them, make them just as smooth as the spirals. I'm going to glue the rail guides directly on top of them. Whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. That's the only part in the rocket that I use epoxy. If you've never built an Aero kit or an Aerotech kit, I highly recommend doing it at least once, getting you one, give them a shot. Lock's good, but they're a little different. Speaking of lock, this has the Fin-Lok. Not lock precision, but this has the Fin-Lok, which does make it unique. It makes those fins incredibly strong. And let me know also, do you guys use the super glue or do you use the epoxy? If you ever had any issues with that. I was just really trying to follow the directions as much as I can. Put it to the test, see if they know what they're talking about. Super glue is lighter than epoxy last time I checked. I got another one for you. Leave a comment for. What's your favorite kit that you've ever lost? And how many times did you fly it before you lost it? The maiden voyage or the 100th time? Because I've had a few that I've lost. Lost and gone forever. That's part of Rocketry. Yeah, let me know. I want to know. All right, got that one sanded. Okay, here we go. Do another test fit. See if we make it flush. Or put it like right about where the measurements want us to do. See, it sits way too far in there, you'll see. Even though with no engine, look at there. That's how flush that would be. I'm not feeling that. No, it'd be too difficult to pull back out if you ask me. So I want it to stick out just a little bit farther. All right, we're going to test fit the alignment. Let's sit down a little bit farther. That probably wouldn't have been too bad. That's with an engine in it, see? That probably would be okay. Just making sure that those are lined up, sticking out. That's about where I have it. That's how far it would stick with an engine in it. Whether that's too far back, that's going to throw off the dynamics, the stability. I don't know. I'll do a couple stability tests first. Or just full send it. Hopefully it doesn't fly into the crowd and I get banned and go to prison. Got to at least give a crap somewhat. So maybe at least try to do a stability test. It is very aft heavy. There's a lot of weight in the aft of this rocket. All right. So here is the coupler for the payload. You're not going to glue those together. You probably could if you wanted to and just have it deploy from the nose cone. But no, we're not going to do that. We're going to follow the directions somewhat. So it's a 4-inch coupler. So we're going to mark off about 2 inches with the old handy dandy Estes tube marking guide on an Aerotech kit, which I guess is not a legal operation. Highly recommend this piece of equipment. It makes marking couplers and stuff like that in tubes a lot easier when you go around like that. It's got to do a lot of sanding on the pencil. It'll take you a couple tries to get it right. There we go, about halfway. Do a test fit. Do the payload section, the upper body tube. And look at there, we got them both sanded now. Nice. 1, 2, 3. And let's just roughen up the old fins, huh? Just a little bit to help with the primer to stick. Plastic fins, molded, already airfoiled so we don't have to shape them. That's nice. Not plywood. Whether you like plastic or you'd rather just have them plywood, they seem pretty strong, I'll say that. Got some weight to them. Like, they're not made out of lead, but you can feel it, especially with the retainer on there and an engine in it. The rocket does seem very aft heavy. But there is no nose weight recommendation, or even to have any kind of weight in the payload section. Yep, this part right here is just purely to help with the primer and glue adhesion for the root edges there. Trying to get you a look at how roughed up it is. I believe that was 220. Probably could have went a little rougher. Just a little bit. Don't knock those edges off too bad, too much. Just kind of flatten them up a little bit, roughen them up for the glue. And I'm going to go ahead and make a line. And I'm using that piece of cardboard as a shim. Kind of hold it there. Probably use a piece of foam or some bubble wrap. Any kind of cardboard piece. And why am I making this line? I don't know. Because I actually wind up not using it. Because I put the primer on, 2 coats of primer, and then the last coat, I put the conformal rail guides on. So this wasn't needed. I should have made the line after those 2 primer coats. And then I still don't make the line. That's how we do around here at Half-Aft Rocketry. Okay, time to glue the Fin-Loks and the centering rings with the medium Bob Smith super glue. This is an upgrade from the super glue I used to use as a kid. Whether it's any different from the old dollar store super glue, I don't know. Let's just say that this is hobby grade. Now, when you glue this, don't put it all the way around, okay? Because you don't want that super glue, when it hardens up, to interfere with the fins. So you kind of want to do it in between those locks where the fins are going to lock in. So you kind of put like little dabs in between. Okay, so we're going to put some, we've got it all measured out how we want it. We know exactly where we want it. We've confirmed that because this is no going back after this. See, we don't want any of it running down where that engine hook slot is. But I do go all the way around this one, I think I do. And kind of miss that area anyways. Even though this side isn't so much, but if you put so much there and you go to put the centering ring on, and it pushes up, and when it would get in the way of the fin going into the lock, that would probably be a problem, but it doesn't. Okay. And we're looking lined up. We're looking good. And it all sit pretty flush. It didn't go on crooked or anything. It's sitting at 90 degrees. See? Makes a little fillet. Don't forget to close it when you're done. That way it don't dry up. Make sure it's unclogged, which I do have an issue with eventually. especially with the thicker viscosity. When you glue this fillet, do the same thing. Don't just go, you see how I'm doing? Just going in between. And maybe hit it with a little accelerator. You think super glue dries real fast? Well, it might, but it might not dry correctly, so you might hit it with some accelerator. See, I just let that dry naturally. Sometimes it can kind of bubble up and kind of gel up and not really harden. So that's where accelerator comes in sometimes. So I'm just going to put a fillet here, and just go in between. Yep, don't make any blockages for the fins to sit nice and flush and flat up against the motor tube, the root edge, the tab. You don't have to put a mountain of it on there. A little bit, just right there. And then we'll put a fillet on the other side there, because there's not going to be anything there anyways. So might as well. I don't even believe that's in the instructions, but you want to put a fillet there. I don't see what it would hurt. It's not in the way of anything. And of course, always let gravity do the work as it's drying. So whatever side you're doing, make sure that that is the way that is facing up. And this side you can go all the way around. Just have to be mindful when you make the fillet or not at the aft ring, depending on how you measure that out. Yeah, let's try some accelerator on super glue. Apparently that's just not fast enough. Yeah, kids these days don't have any dang patience. It just seems like it makes it dry a little cleaner, like almost like a clear instead of that foggy look of what I have noticed. Because to be honest, before this build I didn't really have any experience with the accelerator, but I think I see its purpose. It's kind of an oil, but then it dries up. So let's do the aft fin lock. Same thing. Of course, on this area, that's where the fins are going to be. So don't glue where the fins are going to be touching. You guys ever messed that up? Let me know. Write that in a comment. You guys ever did a through the wall kit and it, you accidentally glued it, let it harden, and it just didn't sit right? What'd you do? How'd you fix it? Some accelerator on it. Okay. Cleaning up that mess. See how it kind of dried up a little more clear? I mean, there's a little hazing on the plastic, but not much. All right, now let's get this baffle put in, shall we? That's where the shot cord's going to go, to the eye bolt. All right, here's a look at the instructions. This is where we are. This is the part of the build that we're in. And from what I understand, that eye bolt's supposed to go all the way down, not sticking out a little bit like that. Doing this as quickly as possible. I figured that some of the glue would get pushed down into the threads. And I'll put another one there. How about that? A little bit of accelerator. And here's the cooling mesh. Now it says that you want to stretch that out to about 6 or 7 inches, I think. I think it was that. You don't want it balled up when you shove it into the motor tube. It just sits up in, you don't glue it in or anything. It just sits up into the motor tube. So don't pull it apart, just stretch it. And you'll kind of feel it out. And I'm using my mat ruler there to see about how stretched it needs to be. You're just going to shove that up into the motor tube and it sits there. And this can be taken out and cleaned as well from all the ejection residue. So that looks like about 7 inches. Nice silver looking turd. And we'll put it in there this way first. And apparently you don't have to worry about it falling down or falling out or getting in the way of anything. But you don't want it sitting in there all balled up because the ejection charge might not, the gases might not be able to pass through properly. So you want it sitting probably right about there because we're going to glue it. We're going to glue the baffle. You probably could have left that out at this point in case you didn't want to accidentally glue the mesh to the motor tube by an accident, or the baffle. The baffle's permanent. That's going to stay there. But you are able to take that mesh out and clean it. Okay, put your little bead around, good old medium. Get it down nice and flush. It's not sticking up. It's flush against the motor tube there. Let that dry for a couple seconds. A little something like that. Of course, I've already got the eye bolt in, so you probably could have left that out till that spot and then put it in. That's how I do. I don't think ahead at all. See, still sitting up in there. That shouldn't come out or interfere anyway with the ejection charge. Give the slots a glue, a little bit of glue, glue the slots kind of back together from the cut, and then put you a fillet there. Yeah, it shouldn't bunch up on top of the motor whenever it's accelerating. Now, I don't know if that would affect you, whatever kind of engine you put in there. Yeah, a little bit of accelerator. But it might affect how long of an engine you could put in there. So you might just omit this whole thing and just put a centering ring there and attach your shock cord differently. And if you don't feel elastic and you want to go all Kevlar, that's how you probably have to do it as well. And you could attach it to the eye bolt, but if you're going to go a little bit custom. But that's another unique thing about these kits, is that baffle system. All right, so we're still fitting. And when I do put the fins in, when you glue them, just leave one in or two in, and then glue one. I don't do that. I make it harder on myself. All right, so we're fitting good. We're good. We're ready to go. Okay, so let's tie the one end of the shock cord to the baffle, huh? We're going to use this loop knot. I don't like snugging a knot down on top of something. I like it to be a little loose. I like it to be able to move around. Now this knot isn't going to slip on you if done properly. But if you kind of use that picture there for a reference, which I just found that on, I think, Google. Once you do one of these knots, they kind of become secondhand. But it cinches down and leaves a loop. That way, like if you're doing a regular old box knot or just a regular old knot and you doubled it up, it's not sitting firm on the eye bolt itself. Because to me, that's like friction, and it seems like it would come loose. So I like to alleviate that pressure a little bit. So I like using a knot like this that creates a loop. Or you might have a sewn loop. I don't know about elastic, but maybe Kevlar or nylon shot cords. You would do a sewn loop style. Of course, I didn't show you where the crap. Filming. Gotta love it. You gotta remember that you're filming sometimes. It has to be on camera. But just follow that picture. Maybe practice on a rope or something first. And make sure that the loop doesn't have to be huge in the tag end. You know, maybe cut it to size. All right. So that tag end, I actually tried burning it off. You might be able to get away with like the other kind of elastic, but I'm just going to glue it. I'm going to put a pretty big goober of super glue on it. I was going to show you burning it, but that wasn't working, so I did not. But that's what you can see. It's been burned up a little bit. So I'm going to glue that to prevent it from fraying. You can even tie another knot. Like another little square knot, box knot, regular knot. Okay. So, this is interesting. Because I've got the glue fingers. Because it's super glue, and that's what happens. And this stuff is actually amazing. You could probably use nail polish remover as well. And be careful about what it gets on, because it can kind of remove the paint from things like my mat. But that's just a battle scar. Battle scars are cool. See, it just kind of melts off, kind of dissolves. Neat stuff. Debonder. All right, so we got our shot cord attached. Got it. I actually just wound up folding it over. That way, if it was to slip, it would be a little more difficult. See, it's nice and loose. And it stretches good, so we're not moving. That's what I want. Ta-da! So now, we're going to shove this shot cord. I believe it's 15 foot. Through the booster section, the slotted section, the lower body tube. That way the shot cord's out of the way when we do glue. Just feed it through. And once you get to the one end, just start pulling it through. On a 4-inch kit, you wouldn't have to do it this way, because you can usually fit your hand in there and tie it on that way. But I'm not fitting my hand inside that thing. If you can, then you're an awesome contortionist. What can I say? It's a neat trick. And notice we have not glued the aft end centering ring yet. That comes later. Well, at this point, my voiceover part's done because I manned up a little bit. Alright, so now we've come to the best part of the video. This is the full send, full commit part of the build. We're going to put the fins on. We're going to glue them on, actually. Now, it's been recommended to use the medium. I also have extra thick. So the instructions are saying to put it all through the bottom right here and snap them into place, and that's a wrap. That's it. You got your motor assembly and your fins in. As you just saw, I fed the shock cord through the front, into the back, out the front of the rocket itself, the main body tube, airframe. This is full commit mode. So we got to make sure we have everything that we need, everything ready to go. Because we're going to put the fins on, and they're going in. That's it. So one last test fit. Make sure that they snap into place. We got the motor mount exactly where we want it. I am probably going to go ahead and go with the thick, just because it'll make it easier. These do wobble a little bit. I do notice that. So we got to make sure that they go on straight, because we're in full commit mode. This is it. So this is what it looks like with the fins in. If you can get a good look. All right. I'm going to attempt to maybe get a little glue on that when they're in. Maybe not. I don't know if I'm going to be able to reach the edges of the fin when they're in, because that's pretty tight. If all it's calling for is super glue, CA glue, then it's going to be really difficult to try and put it on a stick and put it in there. So I see the shock cords through the airframe now, but it's saying I'm going to put it all along the root edge of the fins. So I'm thinking the thicker might be the better choice here, because I could put it on a little thicker and kind of make its own little fillet on the inside. Maybe I don't have to worry about it. Here we go. All right, guys. This is it. No more test fitting. Oh yeah? There we go. We're not going to move the motor mount or nothing. This is what it's saying to do. Make sure you got some cleanup stuff handy, just in case you get it all over the place. All along the root edge, it says. So anything that's going to come into contact with anything, here we go. Extra thick. Probably could get away with the medium. Probably have about 20 seconds of working time here. Don't mind my twitching, it's just how I do. I'm going to be as quick as possible. Probably already starting to harden. All right, here we go. Don't make me cry. All right, maybe I shouldn't even touch it. Probably stay straight, hopefully. Let's say that's pretty decently straight. Now we're going to put the other two on. All right, round two. I will do one last test fit. Probably not even necessary. But since we're super duper Rocketeers, we're going to do it anyways. All right. That fit. I'm satisfied. This glue's dry on the first fin. It's as straight as it'll be. Here we go. Full commit mode. I don't know why it shakes so bad. I need to get that looked at. It's just an odd angle. I'm trying to film and act kind of quickly. It's not like a nervous thing, but please don't make me cry. Okay, I think we're in. Make sure it's lined up. Kind of hold it into place. I'm kind of holding it with my finger. Also, make sure your fins are clean. No dust. Hit them with the tack cloth, air duster, whatever, before you start putting the glue on. All right, the second fin's on there. We're not getting any wiggle. Definitely dry. Been a minute or two. All right, so we're gonna go with fin number 3. Already test fitted it. We're gonna do like we just did. Go in full commit mode. Also make sure that you're always cleaning. Always make sure you're cleaning the tip off between each fin. That way you're not plugging yourself. Alright, so here we go. The extra thick. May or may not be necessary. Gotta work kind of quickly though. Sorry if I'm not getting you the best footage right now, but I'm more concerned with getting my rocket built correctly and solid. Alright, we're not getting glue all over the place. We're making sure that anything that's going to come into contact with something's going to get glued so it's nice and solid. Alright. We're in. Let's do it. Last one. Alright. Sometimes it feels like it only snaps into one. But if it wasn't laying flat, then you know you got a problem. So it must have snapped into both of them at the same time. You didn't hear a snap snap. Can be a little bit concerning, but I know that it's in there. Well, this is it. That's as good as it's going to get right there. Now, could take some filler, kind of close these gaps, maybe even a little bit extra super glue. Try and make your own little fillets. This shouldn't be a big deal. We're going to paint it and prime the crap out of it anyways. I did take the time, obviously, to, do the tube spirals. Alright, this is pretty much done, except for the upper airframe, the payload section and the nose cone.